Hello and welcome to Living a Culture of Life podcast by Human Life International. I'm your host, Colleen, and I'm joined today by Joe Jarrell. Welcome to the podcast, Joe.
Hi, thanks so much, Colleen. I'm excited to be here.
It's really exciting to have you here. And can you just, before we dive into the content of our episode today, talking about masculinity and the role of helping men be good leaders, could you give our audience a little background on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, for sure. My name is Joe Jarrell. I'm an online coach. A speaker. I, by and large, help Catholic men kind of build good habits and get fit so they can be good role models for their family. I also help priests and I help them kind of be good role models for their parish. So it's all kind of like what I would say is self development for men in the Catholic world. I think it's a very necessary thing nowadays, especially with all the vices coming at you as a young Catholic guy. I kind of got into this about 2, 3 years ago and been doing it ever since.
What originally got you into this?
Well, I think I had kind of my own experience of being part of the culture. I wasn't raised Catholic, didn't wasn't around any religion growing up, and then I kind of just did what I was very much of the culture, you could say. And
Mhm.
then after I graduated engineering school, which I didn't want to be, which we'll come to later, but I didn't want to be an engineer, but I graduated school and I met a friend at work who was Catholic. He started kind of introducing me to things. I was kind of searching, ended up converting to Catholicism. And, as they say, I was on fire for it. So I took it really seriously, fell down the rabbit hole, all that stuff. But I still had this aching pain of just not knowing what I wanted to do. And I kept doing things in life that other people wanted. My dad wanted me to be an engineer. So I went to engineering school. And then after engineering school, I went to law school. My mom wanted me to be a lawyer. So I went to law school. So I'm living this life of just people pleasing, essentially.
Mhm.
And it kind of reached this climax in law school. I went to Marquette Law, and they had hosted, which is a Catholic school, by the way, run by Jesuits. But they had hosted a Pride night one night, and it kind of reached this like shock for me, where I'm like, what am I even doing with my life? I don't even want to be a lawyer. They're hosting Pride night. I'm super not. I'm super conservative. Like, what are we doing? And it kind of led me to this big decision of like, I'm living on my own terms from now on. Like, I will live what's in my heart. And so I dropped out of law school and I started a fitness company for Catholic men because I was into fitness and I was doing fitness shows. So I was like, you know what? I want to help Catholic men that were like me, that felt like me, and I want to help them become their best selves. And that's what I did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What what it I don't want to say what problems did you see among Catholic men that helped you made motivated you to do this, but what weaknesses did you see, ways that they struggled that you could help them become their better selves?
Yeah. So I knew there was an issue. I knew there was a hole in like the market, so to speak, that I could fill, which was when I was becoming Catholic. I met so many guys that you could say were like part of the inner circle, maybe like considering discernment or
Mhm.
are discerning but haven't gone to seminary, like super Catholic people, you would say.
Yeah.
And a lot of the women were really cool, like easy to chat with. Like I still talk to a lot of them. The guys, though, I found a significant number of guys who were weird or awkward or almost had this like facade up of like ultra Catholicism. And humans are so good at detecting BS. And so when you get around someone like that, you immediately know you're not getting like their most authentic self. And I'm like, hold the phone. What's going on here? Something is off. And why? And that was always in the back of my head. Like, I think no one does that if they're truly comfortable with themselves and just exuding confidence. So these people need help. And so that was the big issue I saw was by and large, a significant number of ultra Catholic guys tend to use the faith as a crutch, almost to avoid being their authentic selves. And they fall down the deep rabbit hole of Catholic theology, rather than focusing on practical skills that develop themselves to be a good leader.
So basically practical virtues in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's typical for a guy who goes to the TLM, for example, to know so much about the church fathers and so little about making money or dating, which is the job that they're called to, assuming they're not called to the holy orders. Their job is to provide for a family and date women and make money. And you can take him and he'll know so much about St. Ambrose and he makes, 30 grand a year. Not to be disparaging, but I'm just being honest.
Mhm.
And that they want a trad wife. So it's like there's a huge disconnect here that they need to be working on the skills that align with their duties.
Yeah, it's like if you want to get married, have your wife be a stay-at-home mom and raise 10 children. You need to actually be
Right.
able to provide for a stay-at-home mom and 10 children and be able
Facts.
to like actually get married in the
Preach.
first place.
Exactly. Yeah. And so if you're not that, the way that you make all that money is by developing yourself. You have to instill confidence to take risk in the market, and you have to develop skills so that you're more valuable in the market and all these things. And that's kind of your job to study as a man. If your parish priest tells you, Billy, love what you're doing, but frankly, you have to read more about St. Ambrose. It's like, okay, then you can go. But by and large, a parish priest is not going to tell you that.
But it doesn't sound like you're saying that learning that kind of stuff is bad either, but if it's coming at the expense of not developing the things to be able to like best fulfill your position in life and like fulfill your vocation, that's when it becomes like disordered.
Yes, totally. Disordered is a good way to say it when it's at the expense of the other things. Like if you're jacked and you're making money, you can provide, and your social skills are top notch. And then you're like, yeah, I just have this hobby of like studying church history. It's like, okay, like fine, like cool. But most of the guys, at least in my program, we've helped over 300 Catholic men now. 10 of them have been priests, a bunch of seminarians. Um, the people that join, that's not the case. They do not like themselves. They are what I call like um, wearing it as a mask, the faith. And we have to break that because God put something really cool in them. Like they're a cool person. We want to get to know them. We don't want to get to know like a Catholic mask of them.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, I have thoughts on how this connects to life and family because I invited you on the podcast. But
Yeah.
do you mind like just sharing with our audience how you think guys who are like insecure with themselves or aren't necessarily making a lot of money or don't work out, how that affects their like relationships and family life?
Yeah. So all of that comes down to a lack. Okay, if you are not executing on the things you need to be doing, that's
Mhm,
going to hit your confidence. It all comes back to confidence, and all confidence is simply a reasonableness that you're going to do what you say you're going to do because you've done it for so long. Like I'm very confident I'm going to get up at 4:30 tomorrow because I got up at 4:30 last 6 months. Okay, it's going to happen. So there's a reasonableness in the confidence. That's all. It's not puffing your chest out in front of a mirror, shouting affirmations. It's a reasonableness.
mhm,
Once you have the confidence, everything else kind of flows from that. I I like me. I'm pretty confident. I like me. I don't need to put on a Catholic mask, and I don't mind being authentic to a woman because I like me, and I think she'll like me too. So it all stems from guys missing the daily things over and over and over. Like they tell themselves they're going to get up early and they don't. And they tell themselves they're going to not watch websites they shouldn't and they do. It's this repeated issue situation of like one version of them disagreeing with the other.
mhm.
Okay, the reason this ties into family is because you're now marrying or dating a woman and you're not confident with yourself, which means you don't believe in you and your job is to steer the ship. So all these people are watching you steer the ship and the guy steering the ship doesn't even believe in himself. So this terrible situation of leadership and vision.
Well, and it sounds like your definition of confidence, this just occurred to me while you were saying it, is like true humility, where it's like knowing the truth about yourself. You're not have no confidence in yourself and you don't think you can do anything, but you're also not assuming that you can do more than you're actually capable of. You're saying, "Hey, I have done this thing for so long that I'm confident that I'll be able to." And
Yeah.
you know your limits, but you also know your strengths.
Right, exactly. It's like a very emotionalist thing. It's like, oh yeah, like I got up this time, all these last days, I'll probably do it tomorrow. That's what true confidence is. So if someone's like, I don't know, Joe, can you help me make money on Instagram? It's like, I'm very confident I can show you how to do that. I did it for this long. I can probably do it here. So it's like, that's so different than like a, hey man, like, hey honey, how you doing? Like a fake, like a faux confidence.
Mhm. Yeah, because
And
it's
that's,
rooted in reality.
yes, that's a good point. It's rooted in reality. And that's the biggest thing I help guys with. So a guy comes into my program, he's read all Chesterton, C.S. Lewis, who are all great. I've read them too. But you know what I mean? That's their whole life. And I say, if I, what time did you get up this morning? They're like 7 a.m. It's like, okay. How much weight have you lost in the 90 days? They're like, none. And they're overweight. And it's like, okay, we're going to put the books down for a sec in the Summa, and we're going to work on you. Because that's really what God wants. And that's what your wife wants. And that's what your kids want is you doing the things you need to do to be a good leader.
Mhm.
That's your job.
I'm glad that you brought up the fitness because that's obviously what you were saying kind of got you started with this. What do you think is the role of like being fit and working out in like masculinity? Like, why is it important that men have physical strength?
I think there's a couple reasons. One is the way you look says a lot. Like, the virtues of the Catholic faith, temperance, fortitude, discipline, all these things, they lead to a healthy physique. So if
Mhm.
you have kids, remember, kids don't care what you say, they care what you do. There's that famous poem, no written word or spoken plea can teach our youth what they should be, nor all the books on all the shelves. It's what the teachers are themselves. So kids don't really care what you say. If you have a six pack and you're 45, your kids will understand the value of health. And your wife, frankly, guys listening to this, your wife is going to take health seriously too, because you steer the ship. You're saying, hey, fam, this thing is important. We're going to take this seriously.
Mhm.
So practicing what you preach, all leadership is influence. And so practicing what you preach is the definition of leadership. Like that's how you're going to influence your family.
For
It's
sure.
kind of like, not to ramble, but it's kind of like if you want your kids to be Catholic, you as a dad have to go to mass. It's not so much telling them to go to mass. It's like they want to see you there every Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you lead really by like the actions that you do much more than what you say. And like you said, people can smell when people are,
Oh my gosh,
you
yes.
know, faking it and,
Hmm.
not being honest about things and are just kind of faking going through life and they don't respect that and they don't want to follow that.
No, no.
So, yeah, I like that you are encouraging guys to do this because I think from the Catholic girl's perspective, if Catholic girls don't want to go out with a guy who isn't fit or who doesn't have the confidence, they're seen as shallow. What are your thoughts on that? Are they actually shallow or are they sensing something? Obviously, it seems like you think they're sensing something deeper there.
I don't blame a woman for doing that. The only reason he's overweight is because of a reflection of his habits. And so she's simply saying like, "Oh, I don't want my husband to have these habits." That's fair. I would say if an overweight guy has changed, he's got like the mindset. He's like, "Oh yeah, I get up early. I'm crushing. I used to be overweight, but now I'm on this journey to like develop myself." It's like that sounds great. It sounds like a great guy. Like as Christians, we don't care where people start as long as they're like working towards the Lord. So, um, but if he's stuck in that mindset, stuck in that role of just lethargy and mediocrity, I don't blame a woman for doing that. I wouldn't date a woman who had that either.
Yeah. And also
Because do
like
you want your kids like women tend to think about like their kids. It's like, do you want your kids being led by that guy? It's like I'm sure he's got great qualities, but it says a lot when he's overweight. And if he's not willing to change, you know, we're just spitting facts.
yeah. And like talking like less about the overweight, but just kind of guys who don't have like physical strength too. I think as a girl, you
Yeah.
don't want to feel more masculine than the guy you're dating. And I think that that's kind of something that women feel, or even just to use a practical example. Like I did a lot of swing dancing in college. And my pet peeve was when guys who were like clearly not strong enough to dip me tried to dip me. And
Yeah.
it's such a like minor little thing, but also like if you want to be able to show up for your wife and be able to just
Yeah.
like take your dancing in a way that's actually fun, like, you need to actually have the physical strength to be able to do that, and that's, like, such,
Yeah.
like, a
Was it an
superficial
ick, Colleen?
example, but what?
Was it an ick?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair. Basic strength for a guy takes probably 6 months to 12 months of just like hitting the gym, eating a lot of steak and potatoes, and you can be like pretty strong. Like benching 2 plates would be like a very standard. Like you could dip any woman. So I think every man should kind of go through that phase.
Do you think it also helps him grow, like, in his spiritual life when he's, like, working out physically?
Totally. Yeah. It's all each discipline affects the rest. And so if you're
Mhm,
slacking on your workouts, I guarantee you're slacking on your prayers and you're slacking on your rosaries and you're slacking on, letting thoughts in, watching websites you shouldn't be, like all that stuff. Cause everything affects the rest. But when you're locked in, everything kind of gets better.
mhm,
Also, like there's just so many benefits from a health standpoint and from like a leadership standpoint to be fit
mhm.
that it is, in my opinion, obligatory for like a man to do so.
What are some of those health benefits?
More energy. Glucose is absorbed better from the cells. Obviously, visceral fat around your midsection is going to be lower, so that leads to just an overall healthier heart. Um, I think a big thing nowadays is diabetes. As you know, one of the reasons diabetes occurs is because an insulin desensitivity. Not to get too nerdy here, but like you eat so much processed foods, so much glucose in the bloodstream, your pancreas has to produce so much insulin that it like freaks out, it gets like desensitized. And so when you're working out all the time, your body gets better and better at handling that glucose. And you can kind of like, your pancreas is like, oh my gosh, good. I don't have to freak out all the time. So eating clean and exercise in America, it's like the best thing you can do. And we could totally go on a tangent, Colleen, sometime about like the health industry isn't going to tell you this. They're going to tell you to take Ozempic, but it's a story for another time.
Oh, believe me, I've listened to many podcasts where they talk about that. It's such a
Yes.
fascinating topic.
Oh gosh.
It's okay, you might not know the answer to this, but I'm curious to know. Do you know anything about how like working out affects male fertility? Just to tie it back to the life and family.
Uh, Not off the top of my head. I know men that work out have higher levels of testosterone, which we desperately need. Microplastics and all sorts of stuff in our water and preservatives in our food lower male fertility.
Hmm.
And so if you can work whatever you can do to up your testosterone,
Yeah,
that's what I would
because
do.
I know like from the feminine side of things, like being able to support your body, making sure your hormones are balanced, like it's very tied into your physical health, being able to like have healthy children. And so I'm
Yeah,
guessing it's the same for guys. I just
it
don't happen
is.
to know about that.
Sleep is the number one thing that's going to up your fertility. Being not fat. Also, actually the biggest thing that will plummet your testosterone is going to be obesity. So, um be fit and sleep a lot, and you should have no problem making babies.
Okay, so
Hopefully.
like sleep a lot, but also get up early.
Yes. I go to bed at 8. Yeah. I don't mess around.
Okay.
Yeah. Nothing's really I'm in bed by 8, 8:15 reading, then I'm falling asleep
Mhm,
8:30, 8:45. That's always the goal. Because then when you're up at 4, 4:30, you have hours to yourself. And every man should do this. I wish I could I'll send you my calendar sometime because it's really important for like men to know that like the first 4 or 5 hours of my day are all for Joe. And that's because I need to be taken care of first before I have to lead. I mean, I got team members, I got employees, I got Michaela, I got clients who look up to me,
mhm.
um, family members that look up. So, like, when you're leading, you have to be on top of your game. So, it's just like that with a husband. So, the first 5 hours of my day are morning routine, gym, and then daily mass. So, it's like Joe has to be taken care of. And then next is team members, meetings, stuff like that. And then after that is anything else. So, it's like that's the hierarchy. And so that's why I tell guys get up early, take care of you, and then go take care of everyone else.
Okay, so to have a little bit of pushback to that, a lot of people might look at that and say it's selfish to take care of yourself first. It
Yeah.
seems like you think it's better to be a leader. So can you just like tease that out a little bit for our audience?
Yeah. So your vocation is to lead, whether as a man, whether that's a parish or a family. And a lot of leadership is helping the other people grow, taking care of their needs. But the first and foremost thing is the law of the lid. If you were to Google what are the most important laws of leadership, number one in most books is going to say the law of the lid, it's called, which is the organization, the institution, whatever it is, whether it's a family or a company, can never outgrow the leader. So you're actually hurting the people you're leading if you're not developing yourself, being on top of your game, because no one's gonna the org is not gonna outgrow the leader. So you have to be taken care of first, and that's the best thing for everyone. Because like imagine if I got overweight and kind of negative and bitter, didn't really take control of my thoughts, and maybe I just stopped going to mass. And I have almost 150 clients and tons of like 6 employees. So it's like, what would that do to the organization? That would cripple it. I'm not going to do that to them.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like everything you were saying, going back to like talking about like health too, is like you're making sure that you are in like the best physical shape without putting a disordered amount of attention on the body either. Like you're having
Yes.
a proper balance so that you can
And
best
yeah.
show up and like support the people in your life and be there for them.
Yes. And you brought up a really good point, I feel like, which is a healthy amount of time. Like, that's why I don't do fitness competitions anymore because it's like you're on stage, you're constantly looking at yourself, you're tanning, you're spray tanning. Like, there's a lot of stuff about vanity that comes in. And it's like,
Mhm,
are we putting too much time into this?
mhm.
I'm not saying if you do a show, you're sinning, but like for me personally, it was like we're spending a lot of time on looking at my body. So
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, even just to tie it back to Aquinas, it's the virtue is the mean between extremes. And so
yes,
you have like physical fitness is that virtue. And then on one side, you have fitness for the sake of vanity and idolizing the body. And on the other side, it's like the hating of the body, which is like a heresy. It's Gnosticism.
exactly. Yeah.
So,
It's like go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. Doesn't have to be crazy, 45 minutes. Eat
mhm.
normal foods and you'll be healthy, But it's the consistency. That's where people fall.
Yeah. So what type of men you said that you work with priests and then I'm guessing single men and then dads as well,
I
maybe?
do, yeah, pretty much any Catholic man between the age of 21 and 35.
Okay. And what do you like,
Yeah.
what exactly do you help them through? Like, what is like, if someone were to like get you as their coach, what would that look like?
Yeah, so it's a combination of habit building and fitness. So I'll create like a full meal plan for them, full workout plan. That's kind of the boring stuff. Like I'll teach them all the nutrition stuff and all the workout stuff, how
Mhm.
to exercise. But what I find more interesting, and I'll train them on that and stuff, and we'll make sure like I hold them accountable. If they start slacking, I'm on their ass. But all the other stuff that I enjoy is kind of the habit forming. Like, what are we working towards? It's like, oh, you have a wife and children. What's the plan for the next 5 years? Like if your wife tapped you on the shoulder and was like, where's the family going in 5 years? Do you have an answer? Or are you like, I'm just trying to get through today? Because that's not what people under leadership want to hear. They want the man with the plan. So I teach them how to make a vision for life, usually a 25-year vision, and then also like a shorter 6-month vision.
Mhm.
And then I teach them how to curate a morning routine, curate a night routine, but then also how to like curate your thoughts because that's so huge. A lot of times guys are where they are because they allow certain thoughts into their mind, like, oh, I can't do X, or I'm bad with money. It's like I don't even like saying it here. Like the language you say says so much about what you choose to believe about yourself. So we nip that in the bud too.
Interesting. What kind of feedback have you had from women about this?
They love it. They love it. I get the nicest messages from ladies. Um, I do some dating stuff too, and I don't know if you've seen any of my reels about like reviewing Catholic match profiles.
Yes, I have.
Okay. So they love that because like it's a problem. And
Mhm.
so I'm kind of hard hitting sometimes in my content. Like I try not to mince words. That's just my style. I'm not saying
Mhm.
it's right or wrong, but I think sometimes these guys need the shock value. And so, yeah, I think women tend to like what I'm doing.
Well, I know when I stumbled across your content, I was like, somebody is saying it. And I've talked to a lot of girls who, for guys that aren't confident, the girls like are put in this position where they're like, we want to like be friendly and we want them to feel like they
Yeah.
have friends, but also if we do that, they're gonna think that we're interested in them. And like realizing like we can't fix this problem. And it's like a guy has to. Like
Yes.
girls, I think
Yes.
inherently know that a guy needs to speak to a guy in a way that he can understand and that
Yes.
this isn't their role. And I think it's
I
really
hear
important.
that so much, Colleen. Amber do you know Amber Rose, the religious hippie?
I recognize the name.
Okay, so she's like an Instagram, or I'm sorry, a
Mhm.
Catholic influencer. She's been on Pines with
Mhm.
Aquinas.
Okay.
But her and I were just chatting, and she was like, literally word for word, almost what you said, Colleen. She was like, if I'm too nice, think I'm interested, but I just want like someone needs to tell them, and it can't be me.
Mhm.
And so I do like people will say things like, "Well, I don't have time to work out." And I have priests on my team too that help out like spiritually. That's another thing to mention. The guys get like spiritual coaching,
Oh,
but
cool.
I have priests on my team that talk like me and they'll say things like, dude, like I have 4 masses today. I still hit the gym. Like, what do you mean you don't have time? Like, pull up your calendar. Because men need that like hard hitting. This is kind of why I think, Colleen. There is I don't know what you call it, a vibe of like Catholic men sometimes to be like hyper nice. And like everyone in Catholicism can be like hyper nice in some situations, like a youth group. There's not going to be a lot of like hard hitting comments, but that's a problem because sometimes guys really need to be like told exactly what the heck is going on,
Mhm.
and that's what they get when they join. So yeah,
Yeah. No, that's good. Why do you think it's important that priests work out?
ask them. When I hop on calls with them, they'll tell me like I feel so guilty telling people to be disciplined through my homilies, and then
Mhm.
I'm like 250 pounds. Like your job's to lead these people. You got to practice what you preach, otherwise they don't care. Nobody cares what you say; they care what you do. It's like lesson number one for a man.
Mhm.
So if you want your kids to go to mass, you have to go to mass. If you want them to not struggle with diabetes, you have to eat whole foods and throw out the processed foods. Like it's the secret.
Yeah.
You want your
Also, like,
parishioners to go to heaven, you got to practice what you preach.
yeah. Well, I also there was a story that happened around here recently where a local man had a medical emergency on a hike, and he was like 2 miles up a mountain,
Hmm.
and a local priest sprinted up the mountain to make sure he got last rites, and actually got there before the EMTs. And another local
Dude,
priest was like, "This is why you need priests who are fit."
I
because
like
if
it.
you're
Yes.
like ever have a medical emergency in the middle of the woods, you need like that priest was able to get there and give him like the spiritual last rites, like be there with him at the end, and that he wouldn't have been able to do if he didn't keep himself in good shape.
That's another great reason. Yeah. Sometimes you got to run just in general to be like able to move quickly.
Hmm.
What if you're on mission in another country? You know, they don't have arbor lifts and little scooters at Walmart. So you like, I would say, yeah, another big reason is that you need to make sure it does not impede your ministry.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh, dating advice. You said that you do dating advice on Instagram. What
Lots. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just talk our audience through a little bit of that? Because I do think that for young people, I think we all inherently see the problems and don't always know the solution. And then I feel
Yeah.
like previous generations who didn't grow up with social media and all of the like, chaos of the culture of the like sexual revolution, you
Yeah.
see all the rotten fruit lying around everywhere now and nobody knows what to do. And I think a lot of people just don't realize the struggles that young people face with dating. And then young people don't know how to get out of these struggles because they're new or they've never been led properly.
Yeah. So I'll say this: a lot of Catholic guys get mad at me for saying this, but I call it like I see it, boys. I don't think it's the women at all. Like I think obviously each situation is different. Some women could be struggling, but like by and large, women are super easy to chit chat with, and like they're social. They smile at the right times. They make eye contact. Like it's not hard. If I went to like a youth, young adult group at like a Catholic church, I
Mhm,
would feel very comfortable like chit chatting with any woman I walked up to.
mhm,
But I'm a little worried if I go up to the guys immediately, I gotta like start talking about Chesterton or something. So I have a couple rules when it comes to dating for Catholic men. Number one, um, you should probably take like 6 months. Don't talk to any women for a second. Just get you in order. Are you getting up at the same time every day? If you say you're gonna complete a goal, are you completing it? Are you thinking negatively all the time and judging others? Like, are you on a path towards like making money so
mhm,
so that you could like build a family, like all that stuff? Like, get yourself in order first. Okay, then once you're like kind of on the path, you can go talk to women. And I would say the two biggest rules are don't bring up religion unless it kind of flows into that naturally. Men, like I said, the whole making it your personality. Women don't want to hear that. They want to be interested and have fun in conversation, and they probably want to talk about them a little bit. And so that's the biggest issue I see. But I would say number two is like be witty, make eye contact, have tonality in your voice, like master body language. And I think that's a big thing missing with Catholic men.
why do you think these things are missing? Like, do you have any thoughts on how people
Yeah,
end up here?
I think maybe to get kind of deep, I think any group that has a deep learning hole, like a deep funnel you can go down, attracts men who are kind of outcasted because it helps them find like a community of their own. And so Catholicism, for example, is one of those communities where you can just fall very deep into it. Like the onion almost doesn't stop peeling. Like you can just keep going. It's crazy. And what's another example? Gaming, conspiracy
Mhm.
theories, anime, like deep learning holes where it sometimes attracts certain guys who can kind of make it their whole life and just keep digging, digging, digging. I think that's one reason. I think another reason is Catholicism, by and large, the culture is very kind, and we don't stop that stuff immediately. And so men are kind of left to do that. But I think the third is, yeah, maybe to tie both of those together, men don't feel comfortable with themselves and they're going to put on a mask. And the mask ends up being just hyper Catholicism. And listen, again, I'm not saying reading the church fathers is bad. Like, I've got the Summa on my shelf too. But
Yeah.
anytime someone talks to Joe, they only get Joe. Like, there's only one Joe. And that's how you're supposed to be. And if you want a Catholic woman, boys listening, like, you have to have one person and they want to know you and they'll sniff out the BS.
And they want like girls want guys that are interesting and can talk about lots of subjects. And like,
Yes,
yeah, if the Summa fits into the conversation, like we were talking about, like I brought up virtue and like
totally.
Aquinas talked about that. It fit into the conversation and it was the proper place. But yeah,
Yes.
you need to be able to talk about
S-
many
s-
different things and not just nerd out about one thing and only be able to do that.
Right. Yeah, like a certain versatility about your like life and your hobbies. I think that's another thing too is a lot of Catholic men tend to only talk to people that are like them, but women want to see a very diverse friend group. They want to make sure you can chat with anyone about anything. So it's very attractive because it shows, you're able can she put you in public? Like if she plucked you out of the TLM and she put you in a gala with a bunch of random people from Hollywood and there's dentists and there's people from Scandinavia, just a bunch of random people. Could you survive? Would you be like weird? Like they want a social guy.
Yeah. No,
But
that's really true.
that's why I tell these guys in my community, I'm like, dude, you need to get friends that aren't like you. Like you need to get the reps in.
Mhm.
And
Also,
then
you're
there's
not.
that element. Sorry, last point.
Yeah,
Then
no,
there's
no.
that element of like, okay, we're supposed to go and what is it, Matthew 16, go and preach the gospel to all nations. So literally, we're called to evangelize, and you talk to the same four ultra Catholic guys all the day. How are you evangelizing? No
That was
way.
literally the point I was gonna bring up. It's like you can't
Yeah.
evangelize if you're only ever in a bubble. Like, you have to be able to go out and have conversations, and, like, I was a
Yes.
philosophy major, kind of a nerd
Okay.
about it,
Yeah.
and, like, what I love about philosophy is it's, like, human reason, and you can, like, find the level that somebody else is on and talk to them about intellectual things, and you don't have to
Yes.
just come and be like, "The church says." You can say, "Okay, you think this is
Yes.
true, I think this is true. Let's talk about it," and you can, like, work someone up to having a understanding of the fullness of truth,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, if you just come
Totally.
in and you're like, "No, but the church says this," you're
Yeah.
not you're not gonna make any headway.
No. And then the question is like, are you even trying to understand and evangelize, or are you trying to like sound smart? Which is almost like a
Mhm.
sin. Like, what are we doing here? But that's why like getting the reps in with different people so important. And there's something really interesting, Colleen. If you notice, priests tend to be really good at this. Like I'm sure you've talked to priests before. They're super easy to chat with usually. Like
Yeah.
very what I would call self-developed. And it's because, in my opinion, seminary is like a weed out process. Like like it's difficult. Like you have to get up early. You have to be good with people. You have to speak well. Like it's a self-development journey basically for 8 years. But a lot of guys don't go through that. And so, like, the secret is not the more, like, you have to become more pious. Like, the most about Catholicism people are the priests, and they're extremely self developed, really easy to chat with. So, that's what I tell guys.
Yeah, and, like, going back to the point you were making earlier too, it's like becoming the best version of yourself isn't how much intellectual knowledge you have. Not that that's bad, but it's making sure, like, you're building your own personal virtue, and yes, part of that is developing your mind, but also part of that is working out or eating healthy or just practicing prudence and temperance and all of the different virtues, and or if you're only working out the intellectual and you're not working on the body, it's like working out one leg and not the other, where
Yes.
you're going to be imbalanced because we're body soul composites, and what you do with the body is going to affect the soul. Did I mention I was a philosophy major? It's coming out again.
Yeah, right. I can hear the theology of the body coming out right now. People have said they're like, why don't your fitness and faith? Why don't you like talk like write your reflections on the theology of the body? And I'm like, dude, that would be a disaster. I'd probably be speaking heresy within 15 seconds. Like it's above me.
Well, it's like the one
Um,
thing about both Aquinas and Aristotle is that they're very practical. And they're
yeah,
very like, okay, what's like the practical common sense thing? And I feel like what you're doing is like that like in a coaching way where it's like, okay, what's the practical thing that you need to do? What are your like duties in
exactly.
your life right now? And how can you best fulfill those? And like if you're fulfilling that, you're gonna open up your capacity to like accomplish greater things later on down the road.
Yeah, very practical stuff. And it's funny how you said like that. Yeah. For example, one of the things that a lot of guys focus on is like the intellectual side. Remember, you're not called to be an intellectual. It's fun. I like sounding smart too, just as much as the next human. But at the end of the day, you're called to provide and protect. So, so make money and be strong.
Mhm.
Basically, are the two things. But they don't study make money and be strong. Like that means study the market or study your skills so you can be higher skilled and make more money, and then study fitness and health. That's what you should be studying. And success, whether whatever endeavor you're going after. There was a book written about this, like the metric that most determines success, and it's not intellect. Intellect was like 13th, I think. The number one metric was grit. So a deep, like an ability to stick with long term goals, I think is the definition of grit. It's the
Mhm.
number one thing. If we can give Catholic men that, you've got it. And so it's like very practical things completely outside of like, you know, saint, one of the saints, some church father. It's like so outside of that. For now, it's just the moment by moment decisions and like, what are you doing in your own life? And that's what I try to teach them.
Yeah. And like again, not that studying the saints or anything like that is bad, but like
No.
it has to be like part of developing like a like you have to be an entire human being and that has to be like one part of being virtuous in every way,
Yes.
including your physical.
Yep,
Like,
and kind of to that point, like you should always study the faith. I feel like I'm sure you would
mhm,
agree. I talked to a priest about this, who's a bodybuilder, actually, also very into fitness. And I asked him once, I was like, "So this is coming from a priest, sacramental theologian, so like
mhm,
smart cookie." And I was like, "How much time do you think laymen should be spending on learning the faith?" And he was like, "If you just read a book at night about Catholic theology from like a good source,
mhm.
10, 15 minutes a night, every night." You're set. Like you're gonna know so much. And that's what I tell guys. I'm like, maybe don't watch a 3 hour Pints of the Aquinas video when you're 250 pounds. Maybe go to the gym, prep some food, and then read a book 10 minutes before bed and fall asleep.
Or you could listen to the thing while you're working out, just saying.
There you go. Yes.
I listen to so many podcasts while driving, it's
Yes.
insane. Um, okay, one last thought before we wrap up today. You
Yeah.
shared a video on Instagram recently with a quote from I think it was Saint Ignatius on exercise being a form of prayer or how it can be
Oh
a form
yeah.
of prayer. Could you just give like a few thoughts on that and like what your experience has been with that?
Yeah. I think the best form of prayer is what you're really doing. Like, I really do believe that. We think a lot. To me, thinking's a little easier than doing. And so, if I really want to show God I love him, it's going to be in my actions. And so, if I want to be temperate, I'm not going to eat the cheesecake. And if I'm going to be disciplined, I'm going to go to the gym. And so, to me, it's my way of saying, like, no, God, I'm really serious. I know I thought I was going to do these things, but now I'm showing you. Like, I really do take this seriously.
Mhm.
And when you do that, you kind of put God first and it's easier to go. It's not about you anymore. Yeah,
And it's
that's how
like
I think of
bringing
it.
your body and soul in unity in like in prayer and like praise of God.
Yeah. Right, right, it's not about the six pack or how big your muscles get. It's like you're going to be disciplined and temperate, give your body energy for the day because it's in line with your vocation, which is the best thing to please the Lord. Like
Mhm.
it's all kind of forgotten. If you go in thinking like that, it's a lot easier to get it done.
Yeah, it's just it's a proper ordering, which is like all of the virtuous life. And like you were saying, like if you're actually being a faithful Catholic, like to tie this back to what we talk about at the mission, like here at HLI a lot with things like sex. It's like when people sleep around and they're using contraception and all of this, they're going to get STDs or they're going to have physical effects to their body, like because of the hormonal birth control, which is hurting them. Like you start seeing all these like physical deteriorations as well as the spiritual ones. And so living a virtuous life is going to be the best for you spiritually and physically together. They're not opposed to each other. Like they're joined. And that's not
Yeah.
saying that there's not times that maybe you're doing extra fasting because that's like better for your soul, even if it's like, I don't know, as especially as a woman, it's like fasting is yeah, apparently not always that good. I don't really know. But you might be doing things sometimes that aren't as good
Yeah.
for your body as they are for your soul. But like in general, if you're living a virtuous life, you're going to be the like most spiritually and physically fit.
Yes. Nothing escapes each other. Like it's all kind of
Mhm.
connected. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
Exactly. Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great conversation. Thank you for what you're doing. It's definitely needed, and I think you're like a good voice for being a role model, but also like someone who's willing to work with guys and help them become the best version of themselves, and not just standing on a pedestal saying you need to get better and not
Yeah.
offering the helping hand. It sounds like you're doing both.
Yes, maybe one parting point I can make, and thank you, Colleen, is that I was there. If anyone's listening to this and it's like, dang, Joe's talking right to me. I was there. I was the weirdo. I only talked about the Summa. I dressed weird and started to learn Latin. So I was there and I came out of it. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I do. So hope this got you some value.
Well, now your studying of the Summa and all of that is just like one facet of an interesting person. So it's like you can bring that up and be able to connect with people. And it's just one more thing you're able to talk about, not the only
Yes,
thing you're able to talk about.
exactly.
Because I'm
Yes.
sure that if you only talked about fitness, that would also be really boring.
Oh my gosh. Personally, I find fitness kind of boring after a while. I might be biased. I've been telling people to eat broccoli for 2.5 years, but yeah, you want to be multifaceted for sure.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you for coming on the podcast and talking about this.
Of course. Thank you so much, Colleen. God bless.
You too. You're welcome. And to all of our listeners, please like, follow, and subscribe. Check out the new ebooks we have coming out and keep on living the culture of it. God bless.